You're listening to episode 47 of Literacy in Color. Today, we're chatting with Tiffany Obeng, a lawyer by trade who also just so happens to be an author of several educational and inspiring children's picture books. Tiffany creates books featuring Black children and families in spaces where they have historically been absent. Her books also feature Black child characters in normal, everyday situations, so all children are normalized, humanized, and the world can be made a safer place for them. Her books include popular kids' career books such as Andrew Learns About Lawyers and Andrew Learns About Engineers. She has seasonal books like Spencer Knows Spring and even books about honesty like Scout's Honor. Through her books, Tiffany seeks to combat the literacy crisis by providing representation that matters. Today, we're honoring the often forgotten figures of literacy, Black boys, and explore how storytelling can be an act of social justice. Welcome to the Literacy in Color podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Sullivan, a science of reading advocate with over a decade of experience as a reading interventionist and literacy coach. I'm passionate about making evidence-based instruction both effective and engaging. If you're interested in captivating our learners on reading fluently and understanding language, or as I like to call it, keeping it colorful, then you've found the right place. Each week, we'll explore intriguing lit bits and practical strategies around the science of reading and structured literacy to help you be colorful and teach colorfully. Are you ready to bring literacy to life? Let's color outside the lines and make an impact together. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Literacy in Color. Today, we are joined by a wonderful children's book author, Tiffany Obeng, and we connected on LinkedIn. And we started chatting after one of my podcast episodes with Dr. Jasmine Rogers on Black language and structured literacy. So after this one, go back, check out that one. It's episode 15. And Tiffany and I were chatting about amplifying the voices of the forgotten figures in literacy, and that would be little Black boys. So I am so excited to get this conversation started. I think it's a really important conversation to have, especially as you're listening to this in the summer months and perhaps thinking about your classroom library and how you want to set that up for this coming school year. We're going to be talking with Tiffany and shedding some light on some important things to take into consideration. So first of all, welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I cannot wait to start our conversation.
Me too. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you ended up down the road being a children's book author?
Of course. So I'm always wondering how far back should I go, but just to give more context, I am a lawyer by trade. And so going to law school was something that I was told I was going to do. So they said I was going to become a lawyer. I did not know what that meant or entailed other than you had to do really great in school and you had to go to law school. And this was instilled in me in like fourth grade. And so all throughout my grade school education, I worked really hard, graduated number 6 in my high school class, graduated summa cum laude in 3 years from my college, went to one of the top tier law schools in Texas or United States, graduated from there, passed the bar the first time. And now I'm like stuck in the world of what do I do now? And so while trying to fumble my way around as a practicing lawyer or a lawyer, period, I did become interested in employment law and particularly employment discrimination. And so when I became familiar with the area of law, but also the statistics that surrounded women in law, and then how it gets even smaller for like minority groups of women in law, I was like, wow, this is such an interesting idea, interesting concept, because I hadn't ever thought about it. And so time goes on. And now we're in 2020, and I am not a practicing attorney, but I'm in equal opportunity space. And so what that means is I work with the laws to ensure the institution is complying. So we kind of mitigate risk before it gets to lawsuits, right? So we still work with the employment discrimination laws, making sure that the institution understands their duties to not discriminate against anyone and provide equal opportunity and access, right? And so it's 2020. The pandemic has knocked us off our rockers. We're working from home. We're just trying to survive. And so during that time, I came across a Facebook group about self-publishing. And I said, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And so I used my legal background and started researching how to self-publish, what does it mean, and all of the things. And so I published my first book in August of 2020. It was called Andrew Learns About Actors. And I was happy with that. It was something that me and my son could share. We both love reading. We both love playing around or watching TV and talking to the TV and all those things. And so as 2020 continues, April 2021, I put out Andrew Learns About Teachers. And that one was, again, to follow the careers or show kids different careers. But I really wanted that to be an ode to teachers because during the pandemic, as you may recall, teachers were pivoting and turning the world upside down to try to educate our kids. And I just really wanted to highlight all that they do. And so while I am going through the path of being a self-published author, I come across statistics once again. So you might remember when I was a lawyer or law school, I came across statistics. So I come across statistics in the children literature space. And it was talking about how majority of kids' books feature animals, overwhelming majority, feature animals, and less than 13%, and this is back in 2021 at the time, but the number hasn't really moved. But the number for books that feature Black characters was less than 13%. And I was like, wait, what? And so I'm putting Andrew Learns About Teachers on my son's bookshelves, but he has a whole bunch of books. And I'm like, wait, he really does not have any books that feature Black characters. So I'm like, I can do something about that. And so I just continued writing children's books and making sure that it featured Black characters. So that's my journey.
That is so special. And I think about the importance of having representation in your books, right? Everybody's making sourdough during the pandemic, and here you are trying to change the statistics in this world. And when we're talking about shining light on little Black boys, that really hits home because, hey, your son, we have a little Black boy right there. And you want to make sure that he feels seen in the books that are on his shelves. I had a friend recently post on social media about an experience. At the time of this recording, we are here in April, and back in February, we had Black History Month. And she said the first book the teacher pulled off the shelf for Black History Month was like a book about slavery. And that was the first book to feature a person of color the whole school year. And it was like, okay, we have to like associate always slavery and people of color in our literature. Like we can't celebrate Black culture in a different way. This is the first inkling of the representation that you're giving to your students. So I think that it's so important to just put more literature out there where people of color are normalized in society, just like we see every day in our worlds. But can you talk a little bit about why it's so important to you, like why it hits home to you so much?
Yes. So as you mentioned, or as I mentioned, I do have a son and he is a Black boy. He is now 9. At the time when I started writing, he was like 4. But it's important to me because there is a perception that boys in general and Black boys specifically do not like to read. And then we know there are statistics that show, I sound like a statistician, but there are statistics that show that Black boys specifically are most impacted by the school to prison pipeline. And then you have the dropout rates that are higher among Black boys than other groups, right? So then you have the studies that show that most inmates are illiterate, and illiteracy is a dominant correlation among dropouts and inmates. So I strongly believe that this correlation as it relates to Black boys is due to the lack of literature geared toward our Black boys. So for example, we have now several hair love books for Black girls. These are important and they're needed. I'm not saying stop it, but there are a dearth of hair love books for Black boys. When Black boys need to feel comfortable about their hair too, because their hair is also different from their non-Black peers. So I wrote Black Boy Hair Joy actually because my son was teased about his hair. It was a light tease, but he was teased nonetheless. And that would make me think like, we don't really have any books that celebrate Black boys and their hair. The current books that are geared toward Black boys are primarily sports. And those books likely still do not have characters that look like them. So you have the sports books, but they're not going to have the diversity of characters. So there are not enough books that feature Black boy protagonists doing everyday things, which leads to the misperception that Black boys don't read, when in actuality, there is barely anything for them to read, and they are in essence forgotten.
That is just stark and shocking. And I am a statistics girl too. And recently I watched the Truth About Reading documentary. And one of the stats that they shared in their documentary was about the school to prison pipeline, and that 66% of students who don't read proficiently by the end of fourth grade end up in jail. And I'm curious what the breakdown is when you actually look at ethnicity or race and things of that nature. But it's so connected. We don't teach kids how to read. What are we determining is going to be in their future? And part of the teaching how to read and part of the instilling the joy of how to read is actually putting materials in front of them that are meaningful to them too. So I love how your books reflect these real everyday experiences with so much intention. And can you talk about just how you approach creating your characters like Andrew and the stories like Black Boy Hairjoy that just feel both relatable and affirming?
Yes. So I am deeply inspired by my son and his plight in life. And I keep talking about my son because it all started with him, but I do have a now 4-year-old daughter and she has a book, just nothing named after her. So his everyday dealings is what I see and what inspires me. And the things I learn about him and his world are not unlike other children. That's what I've come to learn. And that's what I hope others can learn from the stories. So the characters and the stories of my books, they're going to deal with universal topics. We're going to deal with honesty. We're going to deal with changing families and friendships. We're going to deal with what do you want to be when you grow up? We're going to deal with self-love. We're going to deal with seasons. The characters themselves are probably aspects of my son or something drawn from my childhood experience. But I always approach character building and story building from a tangible inspiration. And I believe that is key to creating relatable and affirming and authentic characters and stories.
Yeah, that's really special. And we're just normalizing real life, really. When we think about, like I was mentioning before, my friend's experience with her son, having his first experience of seeing someone who looks like him in a book and it be about slavery, what are some of the common narratives or stereotypes that you're hoping to challenge and dismantle through the work that you're doing?
Okay. Yes. I love this because it's my soapbox moment. So I have what I think are two big stereotypes that I hope to challenge. And the first one is twofold. So I dismantle the notion of unbelonging. So everyone belongs everywhere and is entitled to access to all spaces. And that includes kid literature and in workplaces. So with my career books, I intend to show all readers that Black people and all people of color and women belong in workplaces and spaces, especially those where we have historically been absent, such as the legal field. And with all of my books, and especially books such as my Seasons books or Honesty book, I intend to show that we belong in kid literature on the covers of kids' books and all throughout the pages. And by normalizing our presence in these spaces, I hope that in turn, the world would be more accepting and safe for our children as they become adults. That because they have already seen a Black woman biologist, paleontologist, botanist, or what have you on the pages of Andrew Learns About Sciences, that it wouldn't be a shock or unreasonable to anyone to see a Black female scientist in real life. And that because they have seen a character with locks or braids, that it would not be unusual to see them in real life. That people of color stop being a mystery and instead become real people, humans, worthy of respect, access, opportunity, and belonging. So that's one. And I'm so proud of myself for keeping it kind of short. And so the other huge misperception that I challenge is that books featuring Black characters are Black books, quote unquote, Black books, or only for Black readers. There are what I call privileges that exist in kid literature. And by that, I mean, if a book features a non-minority character, then the book is for everybody. And if a book features a girl main character, then the book is likely for everybody as well, unless it is a specific girl topic like puberty or something. But if a book features a Black character, then it is a quote unquote Black book. And if that book features a Black boy character, then it is a Black boy book. So people have said, if you put a white character on my books, especially like the Andrew Learns About books, because those are one of the most popular books that I have, or a series of books that I have, they're like, oh, if you put a white character on that book, it's going to sell. Or do people really buy your books with the Black character? I'm like, yes, it's universal. These are universal topics that we're talking about. But while it may be true that if Andrew Learns About featured a white character, Andrew, it would sell more, this is very hurtful and harmful rhetoric in practice. We need to stop pigeonholing our books and dismantle the privileges in literature, because they only perpetuate division, fear, and hinder progress. And it hinders a future where everyone is seen and treated equally. Off soapbox.
Yeah, mic drop. Okay, let's just stop recording because that was powerful. But really, it's so true. And I mean, we're in 2025. You would think that we'd be further along. And yet here we are still having to have really tough conversations about things. And Dr. Rudine Sims Bishops, she has that beautiful quote that books should be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And when she talks about books being mirrors, it means that children should be able to see themselves in their books. So you see yourself in that character. When they're windows, you kind of have a look into that world. So it can be someone who has a different life experience than you, and you're experiencing that world. I particularly love the sliding glass doors because it's giving you an opportunity to open that door and walk into their world and experience that world with them. So I feel like that's what your books do, really. And it just highlights the importance of diversity in literature and being able to have all students experience our beautiful multicultural world that we are all living in. And you spoke so beautifully about the long-term impact of representation. Can you share a little bit more about how Black Boy Hairjoy and your Andrew Learns series embodies that whole vision about mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors too?
Yes. So with the mirrors specifically, I would say that kids see themselves in it, but not only Black kids. So Black kids, of course, are going to see themselves in it because the characters are going to likely look like them. When I'm at vending events or when I'm at other events, people say, oh my gosh, I was drawn to insert book because this character looks just like my son, my godson, my daughter, what have you, if I have a book that has a girl character on it. So yes, so the Black characters or Black kids will see themselves in it, but any kid can really see themselves in the books that I have, because if you love to play with dinosaurs, then you're going to see yourself in Andrew Learns About Scientists. If you're starting your first day of preschool, then you're going to see yourself in Andrew Learns About Teachers. If you have friends, you're going to see yourself in Black Boy Hairjoy or Two Houses Down. If you have a baby sister, then you're going to see yourself in Andrew Learns About Lawyers. You know, if you have a mother lawyer, you'll see yourself in Andrew Learns About Lawyers. So there's so many connections you can make with a character that goes beyond just skin color. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So that's how the books act as mirrors. And as far as windows, I would say for those who do not have opportunity to see positive portrayals of people who are unlike them, then these books offer a peek into how other people live. And what the readers come to know is that we are different, but we are the same. There's a Sesame Street book called that. And it's so true. So you get to see, like, oh, I'm looking into this person's world and I see, again, I'm just going to use the idea or imagery of brother standing in the kitchen with the dad holding the baby sister and the mother lawyer getting ready for school. Work. That happens in Andrew Learns About Lawyers. And so you look into and you're like, oh, they're in the kitchen getting ready for mommy to go off to work and the baby's up rattling her rattle and the boy is standing there ready to go to work with his mom. Like, that's what my family does. So it's a peek into their world and how it's really not that different, which really goes toward the piece or my intention to normalize. And then with the sliding glass doors, because my books, particularly the career books, build in a world, almost like an imaginary world that should be reality. And we were moving toward reality. But in a workplace and literature, we have this world where everyone, whether they look like you or don't look like you, but they're together, they're being inspirational, they're being successful, and they're accepted just the way they are.
I love that. And your Andrew series is really, really special because you have all of these different career paths that the children can become, right? It's like Andrew becomes a teacher or a paleontologist or a scientist and like all these different things. And they can see a future for themselves too. So it's like you can see yourself in this book currently, and then you can see your future path of where you can end up in life. So I think that's so inspiring. And that series in particular is something that a lot of teachers should aspire to have on their shelves and to share with their students. So, how do you see your stories fostering both a sense of belonging for Black children and also a deeper understanding for non Black readers?
Yeah. So just to emphasize once more, I want to point to Star Trek. And I'm trying to think of her first name, but it's Nichols. Her last name is Nichols. But she was the Black lady on Star Trek. And I remember the story of Whoopi Goldberg, who was watching TV. They didn't really have female characters on TV. And if they did have female characters, then they were likely in a service role, like a maid or nanny or something like that. And so Whoopi Goldberg famously says that she was watching Star Trek. Star Trek came on. She sees the Black lady and she yells, "Mama, there's a Black woman on TV and she ain't no maid." And so for so many people, they were inspired by the Star Trek lady's character, whose name I cannot remember. And Dr. Martin Luther King was actually like, "You got to stay in this character because it's beyond you." She wanted to quit because, as you can imagine, at that time, she was experiencing a lot of racism and just unhappiness on the set because they were making her feel like she didn't belong. So she had told Dr. Martin Luther King, like, "Okay, I'm about to quit and go back to dancing," because she loved dancing. She's like, "I'm about to quit this. I'm about to go to dancing. I'm about to go somewhere where I am appreciated, not just barely tolerated." And he was like, "Nah, girl, we don't have time for that. We are on a mission here." And so with her being on Star Trek, a lot of people finally saw themselves in the future. That's what they said. Seeing her in the future showed that Black people were going to be in the future. Like, oh, we exist. We're in existence. We belong. Okay. Like, and so when I was reading that, I was like, wow, because I wasn't born before Star Trek was on air. So I've had a few more shows since then. But I was just like, okay, my books can do the same thing. Again, the books show that we belong in different spaces. It shows that we belong in STEM, or you can aspire to go into a career in STEM. It shows people looking differently. And so what happens when you see someone look different, it's not a shock to the system anymore. It's not a mystery. It's not magical. Like, it's just a person. It's like, oh, I've seen this person before. So it's not anything unusual. And I really like to harp on the idea of locks, because in Texas last year, and I don't know the status of it now, but a Black boy was kicked out of school because he refused to cut his locks. And I just wonder if my book had been around beforehand, like 20 plus years ago, seeing the locks wouldn't be offensive. It'd be like, oh, this is just hair. Like, it's clean hair. Like, he wears it nicely. And so it wouldn't be an attack on his hair or his identity, because you would have seen it and it's normal. It'll be normal. It'll be normal. So a deeper understanding for non-Black readers is that, again, it's the normal piece. And I really fear, with all the things that happened in 2020, but has been happening before then, and that continues to happen, I don't know at what age my son will be seen as a threat to society. Again, he's 9. And we keep him clothed nicely. We keep his hair cut. We keep him clean. He's really intelligent. He's 9, but he appears to be like a 12-year-old. I don't know if that's threatening. I don't know if that's a threatening presence. And so it's really important to me to put out images of Black boys, as I said, so they can stop being seen as a threat, that they can have the opportunity to be kids, that they have the opportunity to go through school and hopefully become contributing members to society.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an important conversation. And to think about even the extra conversations that you have to have with your son that other people don't have to have. So, the whole system needs to change. I appreciate all the work that you do in putting this out into the world. And you're speaking from a parent's point of view, and I have the educator point of view. So how can parents and educators use your books as starting points to have these kinds of conversations around identity and inclusion and aspiration and making all of this normal?
So for me, and as a parent, it requires the effort and intention in buying them, stocking them, and then engaging them with your children. So I'm like, beyond that, I don't think you have to buy the book and say, I bought this book, little kid. I bought this book for us because it has a Black character. Now we're going to learn about Black people today. Like, I don't think we need like special announcements or anything. And that's part of the normalization of it. Like, you just open the book and you take them through the journey of whatever the story is. And then they just see. It's the beauty of having a picture book is that they can see different images, and laying out the images in a way that is very colorful. It's non-threatening, it's friendly, it's inviting. And so just reading the story, they enjoy the story. But in my opinion, and I would be interested, Michelle, to hear what your opinion is, I don't think there has to be a big disclaimer, a big hoopla, but just stocking the shelves, like you said, having something beyond slavery, just having a book, that features a Black person, like a Black boy, Spencer, who knows spring. He's just talking about spring and frolicking around in spring and letting the kids know, like, this is what spring looks like. And to me, that's all that's required, because I'm not having like, we're reading this book because we're going to talk about identity, inclusion, and aspiration. But I'm interested to know.
Yeah, 100%. When you lead with that, it makes more of a divide almost. And I think of myself from my mom point of view. My older one right now is 5. She's in pre-K. But when she was a little girl, I got her little Black baby dolls, got her Black Barbies, every color under the sun. And it's just for her to see in her world, not every Barbie is blonde hair and blue-eyed. And for her to just experience culture in the world. This is what we see outside. And this is the toys that you play with at home. And her favorite Disney princess is actually Tiana. She says she's the most beautiful. And I think it's because she doesn't look like her. And she thinks she's a little bit more interesting. Even from an educational point of view, just to be mindful of the students in front of you. And you don't always have to make a big hoopla about the differences in the books. But I think sometimes kids do have questions and they want to have conversations about things or conversations about their experiences sometimes. Sometimes school is that safe space to talk about it. And just for teachers to have an openness to have those types of conversations and not knock them away when they do come up naturally and organically in the classroom, I think is really important, because that's just part of building up our competent little society here. Have those questions answered and just feel loved and safe and welcome. I don't know if you saw the buzz recently. A teacher got in trouble for having a sign up saying everyone is welcome here with different colored hands. And like, that's not okay. And those kinds of things should never be okay. And it's times like those where we do need to have specific conversations, I think, about inclusion and everyone is welcome. Like, which one of these hands is not welcome? Because then that's a problem, right? And then just seeing that everyone's identity in the classroom is special and every child is special, and we want that to be known. So sometimes we'll have explicit conversations, but I think making it just part of your norm is the biggest thing that you can do.
Agreed. I love that. And I did want to say, my daughter was Princess Tiana for her 3rd birthday. And my coworker's daughter who came to her party just calls her Princess Tiana all the time. She's like, that's Princess Tiana. And so knowing that your daughter loves Princess Tiana, I'm like, man, she probably would have loved my Tatiana. Her real name is Tatiana, but yes.
Well, they could be friends.
Right.
I love that. Now we're in the summer months. By the time this podcast airs, what advice do you have for teachers who want to be more intentional in building just a representative classroom library?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So there will have to be intention until we get more, because remember the statistics is less than 13%. And although I have over 25 children picture books that feature Black characters, they're not even counted in that 13% because of the way they count books. So unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I talked about the pigeonholing of our books and how we categorize them. But when you search for them on Amazon, for example, you can put in the keyword string, and you might have to, that says books featuring Black characters, books featuring Black boys, to uncover those books among the masses. And also maybe taking a survey of your bookshelf like I did back in 2021 and was like, oh, where are my diverse books? So taking a survey and seeing where do you stand with diversity, and diversity does go beyond just having the Black characters, but being that I'm a Black author, I'm just going to speak about the Black characters, not saying that other types of groups are not worthy of inclusion. But yeah, so just taking a survey, seeing where you are with your diversity in all aspects, and then intentionally trying to find those books, having recommendations of those books. I was talking to my coworker and she was like, oh my gosh, the School for Black History Month. Now, her daughter, she's half Black, half white, and she has some of my books. And so she goes to a school that is predominantly Black. And the shelves did not have a book with a Black character. And my coworker was like, how is it? I'm like, how is it? So it's not just like we all have to be intentional about it. Again, I go back to my story of not having diversity because I didn't think about it. I literally did not think about it, to be honest. I was just buying books that were in front of me. And books featuring minority characters are not really in front of you. They're not going to be in front of you. And so I was buying books that were in front of me, buying books that I were familiar with, buying books from my childhood, like the author books or whatever, Bearstein Bears. And so to be intentional, I had to actually go digging. And some of the ways to dig is to put in those keyword strings, putting your ears to the street, putting your ears to Instagram. Instagram have a lot of book recommenders. What's they called? Bookstagrammers. Woo! Bookstagrammers who recommend Black books, Black books, quote unquote, Black books. And so I think those are some tips on how to be intentional about building a representative classroom library and home library.
Yeah. And you talked about being a statistic girl too. The other day, I heard another statistic, and I'm not going to remember it because I don't have it written down, but a good chunk of teachers' classroom libraries had books written with copyright from like 1980s and before, like old books. And there are so many new things out there. I think especially within the last 10 years, a lot of people are just trying to be more intentional in representing characters differently from all different types of cultures. So I think that's really wise. Just take an inventory of your classroom library and weed out some old ones. I mean, like, obviously people have those tried and true classics that they love, but make room for the new and make room for diversity because it's really important and it really matters. So thank you so much, Tiffany, for all that you do and all that you share. This has been really insightful conversation. Where can my listeners find you and find your books and learn more about the work that you do?
Sure. So I'm Sugar Cookie Books on every platform. Sugar Cookie, like the actual dessert, Sugar Cookie Books with a S. And so you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sugar Cookie Books. You can find me on Pinterest at Sugar Cookie Books. I do have a Teachers Pay Teachers store at Sugar Cookie Books. And you can find me on LinkedIn at T. Obeng. My website is www.sugarcookiebooks.com. And I also have a www.tiffanyobeng.com.
Beautiful. And so everyone listening, add the Andrew series to your teacher wish list because it's a must-have. So I appreciate you again, Tiffany. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed myself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for tuning into Literacy in Color. I hope today's episode left you feeling both inspired and equipped with something new to add to your teaching toolkit. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would truly mean so much to me if you'd leave a 5-star review. It helps other educators find the show and join our colorful community. And don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more tips, tools, and resources, be sure to check out the links in the show notes at michelleandthecolorfulclassroom.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week. Until then, be colorful and teach colorfully.